7 o'clock. This Transportation Advisory Committee meeting of Tuesday, May 15th, 2018 is called to order.
Okay, Bob, it'll be just a second.
They weren't ready, okay. I forgot about the high.
You're ready.
Okay, the Transportation Advisory Committee meeting of Tuesday, May 15th, 2018 is called to order. Lisa, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Anderson?
Here.
Mr. David? Mr. Jessic?
Here.
Mr. Lyman?
Here.
Mr. Mahoney?
Here.
Mr. LaSalle?
Here.
Mr. McEnroe?
Here.
Mr. Mitchell?
Here.
Mr. Tong?
Here. Well, that's great. We got a full house here almost, except for Jonathan. Good. Item 2, approval of the minutes of April 17th, 2018. Does anybody have any corrections, additions, or whatever to those meeting minutes? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye. 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 Opposed? Passed. Item number 3, agenda analysis. Does anybody have any changes or additions to the agenda that they'd like to make?
Is it appropriate to bring that 7th and Center Street pedestrian crossing up for that? Remember we talked about that? Or is that
7th Center?
We would probably have to go to future agenda.
Yeah, could we do that?
That would be later.
Oh, okay, all right.
Yeah.
Bob, I just want to make clear, 7th and Center crossing? Or are you talking about the pedestrian activated beacon at John Adams and 7th?
No, right here where people try to cross to get to the McLaughlin house. Okay. I saw a family almost get wiped out. People coming up the hill just rambunctious, you know how they come around that turn. The guy put on the brakes and there was a family of 7 stepping off the curb trying to make it. And I thought maybe we ought to look at that for pedestrian safety. Because, you know, with summertime coming and tourists aren't familiar with the city and this kind of stuff. So I just thought it would be something worth discussing, bring it to the attention.
Bob called me about it, and I suggested we put it on future agenda. So, citizen comments, item 4. Does the citizen with us is just here to observe how we do things? So, welcome. Thank you for attending. Item 5, new business and discussion items. 5A, Public Works Report.
All right, so we're going to try and get through this relatively quickly. I think I say that every meeting.
Yep. And 9 o'clock, we're still.
It never really happens, so sorry about that. But so I put a couple things on your at your dais seat, or and I don't know if you need copies of them or not, but there's a couple of things up there. And the first one I wanted to talk about was the one that says Circuit Court of Oregon on the top, and I want to go through that just a little bit, not in detail, but I've highlighted a couple of sections that, to me, I thought made a difference. First of all, this is about this is a lawsuit between the McLaughlin neighborhood and the city of Oregon City with regard to our current site at 122 South Center Street. And the Clackamas County Court heard the case as Judge Catherine Weber. And I think Martin spent every day in that trial, and it was about 9 days of trial.
9 days.
I will say a little frustrating that the city was even in this position. And as the McLaughlin neighborhood's position on this case, on this part of the case, because there's several, but on this part of the case was about whether or not the area that we use, both upper and lower, whether or not they were intended to be part of Waterboard Park in the past and in the future, right? They were arguing that use of, Public Works use of that site was a short-term solution, and that the forefathers before us had intended for that site to be used for a park, not for public works. And we opposed that. And there was lots of, we'll call it evidence that the neighborhood brought to the court. A lot of maps and studies and things that kind of had some inference that maybe that should be used differently than how we're using it. And again, it took 8 days of detailed testimony. The city's time with that was much less, but we spent a lot of time listening to the McLaughlin neighborhood and some of their experts kind of testify. And I say that at the end of the day, the judge ruled in the city's favor and have cleared that property as not a part of Waterboard Park. And I think that's significant. I suppose this can be yet appealed again, and we've seen a lot of appeals in this town. And in this case here, I feel terrible about the fact that the public had to spend as much money and time, well, public didn't spend time, but public resources were spent on this case when they really shouldn't have been. The arguments that decided this case were made by the city and the city's attorney months, if not years ago, with the same group who brought the case against us. So I just think I wanted to share it because I think the judge's comments, especially those highlighted in yellow, emphasize the way the judge saw that and the way she saw the law, and made a decision in our favor. So we're pretty happy about that. Our plan at this point is to make sure that property is unencumbered with problems associated with it, so that it has whatever value, whether it's used for a public works yard or whatever it might be in the future. We want to make sure it's unencumbered. So wanted to share that. The other little piece of legal information that we just got, and I didn't provide you with the document on that because it's much longer, but the same group, although the McLaughlin neighborhood was represented by Jesse Buss, in this case, I want to say it was Jesse Buss who filed a petition with LUBA with regard to a decision that the Historic Review Board made on 2 buildings that are on our upper yard. They're what have been referred to as Camp Adair buildings. They are old Camp Adair buildings that came off the Camp Adair site down near Corvallis, and were part of that that military camp. And then when that military camp got dissolved, the Camp Adair buildings went, those that were wanted went all over the state, and Oregon City took 2 of those, and they're up on the upper yard. And so the city manager had made a decision that, well, again, the neighborhood wanted those to be deemed as historic buildings, and we felt differently than that. And at the end of the day, the appeal was about the process and the way the city commission made the decision to not list them as historic buildings. So the city, first of all, said it's not an HRB decision to make, and so they didn't make it at that level. And so that got appealed to LUBA. We won that case, but the LUBA court said, hey, you know, really the city commission or the HRB should make that decision for you. It shouldn't be made at the city staff level. And so that was the reason for the second appeal. And there were several points to that appeal. But again, the bottom line was the LUBA found in the city's favor on all 4 counts that were brought forth. And so we, again, feel like that site is unencumbered by historic buildings, and in this case, the Camp Adair buildings. So I will always caveat that, you know, this group does a lot of appealing. They may appeal this decision as well, but we're hoping they don't. And we'd just like to move on with site planning for that site. So with that...
Question, John?
Yes.
Do you have any, if you got this far, have any intentions of the further use of the present property on Center Street? What first came to mind is if you eventually get the old distribution center property, which I think is great, but unfortunately it will take it off the tax rolls. So Have you thought about maybe selling part of the Center Street property to gain taxes, or have you got that far?
We have not gotten that far.
Okay.
I mean, as someone who thinks about that site and talks about it, you know, internally, there's lots of options there.
Yeah, right. Okay.
So,
I knew you were very early in the process. So.
right. We really kind of want to talk to you about this, which is the other flyer that's on your dais. And there you go. So this is just a flyer that came out early in the process. It's not got a lot of information on it other than, well, it's got a lot of information about the site itself, but the city learned pretty early on that actually through the media that General Distributors had been bought out by Columbia Distributors, and that they were planning to close the Oregon City distribution site. And so we reached out to them to find out if they were interested in selling the property, and found out pretty early on they were, and that they would start talking to us before they actually listed the lot. So we've made good progress on that. We've got an accepted offer. We have, we offered them about, I think the property was a $7.1 million purchase, and then there was some extra equipment that came along with that amounted to, I don't know, 13,000 or something. So, so anyway, Martin's leading the effort with all the due diligence work, and been putting a lot of thought into what maybe that facility could be down the road in terms of how it could work for operations use. The other little component to that, which I think is another win-win, is the Parks Operations Group was trying to figure out a solution for Parks Operations, and they were planning to make improvements in the form of new buildings at the cemetery site. And even though I think so in talking through that, we thought there's probably opportunities on this for all of operations to be up there. And so that's where we're at right now. We're about 30 days into our due diligence, maybe not quite that much. Is there anything of interest at this point? I think we know it's got fuel tanks on it. It's, you know, security fencing, security cameras. It's a big warehouse space. I don't necessarily think the office space is going to work for us, but it's definitely a site that's got a lot of potential. It's flat. It's got stormwater facilities on it. It's got a lot of utilities on it. Mm-hmm. So,
does it have any little tiny doors?
If we ever do anything with the old building, the tiny door will somehow be incorporated into some sort of art piece. If I
It ought to be
have my wish.
considered historic property or something.
yeah, be careful. It might move some to want to designate it as a historic building. So anyway, we're excited about this piece. All indications are so far that it's the kind of piece of property you'd expect it to be. So,
So you have another 30 days or so in the due diligence?
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
A question, but probably doesn't have an answer, but looking at this, it looks like there's not enough room for the gravel storage and the other stuff that you got up in the upper yard. It's outside in the bins and whatnot. So I'm guessing that may have to stay up at where it is now.
Well, you know, it's 4.7 acres. I mean, it's laid out nicely in that it's flatter. Right?
It is.
But, you know, I think the full layout of how we're going to do our operations, both between parks, public works, and really facility, I think, is another group that we need to think about. We're not ready to kind of roll out those plans, but I do think that we're going to need both the Center Street site. I mean, if we're thinking long-term and we're really thinking, I mean, it was always our intent to think long-term, even if we were going to develop up there, to have another yard space somewhere else. So trying to figure out how to do that and, you know, get the best use of you know, both properties. But I do think it gets a little tight the more, you know, kind of uses you put on there, and you don't want to over ask on this piece and find out that we've given up on Center Street. And so I think you're right. There's probably going to be needs for some yard space. I guess the other thing I wanted to say is, this is, because there's always been debate about whether or not staff were doing their due diligence on looking for another site besides the Center Street property. This is the third piece of property that we've inquired. We made an offer on another property, which is kind of the corner piece where I forget the name of the trucking outfit, but the trucking outfit moved in there. We made an offer on that property, didn't get it. We've been pursuing the nice piece of property that's got the mobile trailers on it for construction, and they've not been interested in selling to us. So this is the third piece on First Street. It's probably the most preferred location for an operations center because of the access to First Street and the industrial corridor. So we're happy about that.
And one of the good things about it is it's out of the floodplain and it's got good connections to the rest of the city.
Yeah.
Of course, there's always the possibility somebody could come in and outbid you. No?
We've got a signed sales agreement.
Oh, okay.
Basically, we need to finish our 60-day due diligence.
Yeah.
We have a bevy of contractors and consultants on the property actively researching everything for us. So there's 2 10,000-gallon fuel tanks, 1 diesel, 1 gasoline. We're doing all the due diligence associated with that, including environmental work, soil borings, water analysis. We've got contractors giving us evaluations of the buildings, structural engineer. We've got everything short of the dog catcher out on the property and making sure that, we're getting everything lined up. One of the biggest things we're working on right now is connectivity and making sure that we can get our city fiber or the county's dark fiber to the facility, as we'll need that connected onto the backbone of our network. So we're using the due diligence time appropriately, and we're making contingency plans so that once we finish that, we move into acquisition, and this ball is going to roll quickly.
Yeah.
Good.
All right, so that's
Would you occupy this site this year or next year?
I'm sorry?
If you close on this deal, would you be in this site next year?
I think that's a little quick. I mean, we still would need to go through design. We're looking at whether or not it makes sense to remodel or it's got lots of warehouse space, which is always going to be there. But the oldest piece of that building is the front end of it, which was the original warehouse. And so trying to figure out how we'd occupy that with, sustainable building and offices is kind of a question. Because right now it's got some offices, but they're all kind of fractured by warehouse space. So you kind of got office over here and you got to walk across the warehouse to get to the office over there, which probably doesn't work for our needs.
The existing building was actually constructed, we've got the full design plans, so it was actually constructed across 6 different design periods. The first period being in 1972 and just kind of progressing onward. And I think John will agree, and Lisa's been inside, the administrative portion is very disconnected. It would be difficult to do a remodel and trying to create that cohesiveness that we don't have in the current facility, and it's just kind of, you move out of a disconnected building into another disconnected building, so we want to take a look at all those, do our due diligence for, what are our options? Is it a remodel? Is it make some just structural improvements, or is it something else?
Do they have truck maintenance facilities there at all?
Not really. Not shop space like what we would need. Yeah. So I guess the other thing that, as we've been telling the story, like to mention, Commissioner Shaw always likes to mention this when we're together at a neighborhood meeting, which is, the city's not borrowing money to acquire the site, nor would we borrow money to do whatever we do for improvements. So really, this started even a year or 2 before I started with the city, which has been about 15 years now. The city's been stocking away money for refurbishment of the Center Street site. So because of that, we've got about 13 million in the bank right now that we'll utilize to make the payment and utilize to make the improvements. And we'll stay within that amount of revenue to at least take on that first phase. That probably won't include any work that we're gonna do on the Center Street site. That'll come later. With no other questions, we'll go to 12th and Washington. So is there any other questions about that? So 12th and Washington signalization project, that is, I'd say, behind schedule. We've got Brown Contracting under contract to do the work. We've met with them. Our latest meeting was with the franchise utilities, so PGE has been down there. They've kind of been, they're busy too, so let me just say that. I get that they're busy, but that was the first thing that had to happen was get PGE poles reset. They need to go with taller poles at that intersection just to get all the wires that are hanging off those poles up and out of the way of the signal. So the new PGE poles are in, all the PGE lines are moved up, and now all the other utilities that were below them need to move up. So we're pressing them pretty hard to get that moving along because the contractor would have liked to have started this project months ago. So we are behind schedule, but we're still working towards solution. And Dana's kind of leading that project, and we've got a couple of staff people that are really kind of working with the franchise utilities to try and get them to move on that a little quicker so we can get in there. But hopefully that'll go good. And there's another little element to that, which is the paving project, which Martin will give you an update on the paving projects, but there's one leg of that we need to pave so that we can get the new loop detection in there when the signals finally end. So we kind of got to coordinate that too. But other than that, that project's moving forward. Malala Avenue grant, good news there. We met with Metro, who is providing the funding for the Malala Avenue grant. So if you remember, we received just under $4 million in grant funding for Malala Avenue between Beaver Creek Road and Highway 213. And the idea there is to improve sidewalks, ADA access, stripe bike lanes, replace the signals at Gaffney Lane in Claremont, and really just kind of enhance that corridor with hopefully mid-block pedestrian crossings, some medians, basically access management along there. If you're used to going into Subway or I forget the auto parts store there or some of those other businesses, they've got kind of unchannelized driveways, so it becomes kind of a safety risk. Not to mention there's no sidewalks through that area, so there's a lot of big shrubs in there, but you got to get out into the pavement to actually make that work. So, big project. The funds were awarded for years 2019 through 2021. So that's when we were expecting to get the funds. And in talking to Metro, one thing that happened out of the award was our project was also, they defederalized those funds. So let's just say that TriMet, Metro and really the state, they're all trying to work together to try and defederalize. So take these projects that are kind of smaller like this that maybe experienced public agencies can deliver and do that without a lot of strings attached to the funding. If it's a federalized funded project, there's a lot of strings attached, a lot of reporting that goes along with it. So not only did we got a little less money than what we were asking for, but the defederalizing makes it much easier to deliver. And in meeting with Metro, it sounded like their staff had a lot of flexibility on how willing they were to work with us. And, yes, they want reporting, and yes, they want to make sure, the money's being spent wisely, but not a lot of red tape, not a lot of hoops to jump through. So that's good news. So they actually said, look, we will reimburse the city for expenses. So any expenses from today forward, we don't have to wait till 2019. So we just need to make sure we're documenting our project costs appropriately so that they can essentially audit them. So we're pretty happy about that. We're still trying to make progress on the Myers Road project, and we got this Washington Street project, and really Dana Webb is kind of the project. She was the one who put most of the lion's share of the work into the grant application, so she's kind of our project delivery person on that. And so we've heard that yes, we can move forward, but we also got to work it into our work plan. So you should see more updates on that as we move into the end of this year and first of next. Any questions about that project?
Other than saying, isn't it fun working with the telephone company and the cable company to move their facilities? I congratulate you on making the progress you're making.
Yeah, we have a right-of-way manager now, too, that was, we have had a right-of-way manager, but he left, and it's been a few months since we'd filled that, so we have a staff person who's filling that. So just having that point of contact that's building relationships with the franchise utilities, all of them, because there's many of them out there, and trying to, give them a heads up about what's coming, what to expect, when they know what's coming and should have known what to expect and they're still not working, he can call them up and ring their bell that way too. And if needed, we can kind of flex our muscle with some of the agreements that we have with those folks. So, but most of the time they're just busy. That's their problem. They're just very, very busy like everybody else. So item number 4 was the fire department signal removal request. I think I've talked about this, but I'm not sure. So wanted to share that the Malala Fire Station, if you've been up on Malala, you notice it's heavy into construction, starting to actually take shape and look like a fire station. And in the land use approval process, there was discussion about dealing with the fire signal that's on Malala Avenue. It's an old state highway signal. It's way outdated. We're fortunate that it worked as long as it did, but our requirement was to replace that. And the fire district has since come to us and said, we really don't think we need that fire signal. And so we've looked into what would be the appropriate kind of documentation to justify removal. And so they moved forward with that, and they hired a transportation engineer who has looked at the manual and uniform traffic control for standards for how to justify the placement or removal of signals. So they've submitted that. One of the requirements was that we actually solicit public input on that. So I don't know if you've driven through there, but there's a sign that says, if we're planning to, remove this signal, if you got an opinion about that, here's the website to go look. We didn't get a lot of feedback from that, but that was kind of meeting that threshold. So they have since submitted the report. Staff has reviewed it. We also work with John Replinger, who you guys have heard from before. He's our contract traffic engineer. He's also reviewed their report and concurs that they've justified the idea of removal of that signal. So that's the direction we're going to move with that. And I don't know the exact timeline for that, but we were really kind of waiting on them to produce the report and share it with us and us to review it. So that's soon to change. Any questions about that? We're going right through these. So ODOT was here and spoke to you folks a little bit about the I-205 widening project. And or actually, I can't remember if they were here or if you did it. Shared the video. Right?
You did it. You shared the video.
Shared the video. Yeah. Okay. So they're planning to actually come. That schedule's moving pretty quick as well, mostly because the legislature set some pretty tight deadlines for that I-205 widening project. So they've got this brochure, which is on your table there in front of you. We've talked to them a couple times. We're starting to meet with them monthly. They're going to be in front of the city commission. I think it's on June 20th to kind of share, more of the construction details because there's a lot of impacts. I don't know if you realize this, but they're planning to widen that bridge, right? And make sure it's seismically upgraded. In order to get the width that they need, they're actually going to, there's, columns out there that are span, the bridge section. They're going to take out columns even wider and remove the existing ones. So quite a bit of impact on our side. They've actually got to build a temporary bridge that gets them out to where they can do the geotechnical borings and build those columns the way they need to build them. So they're going to have impact on John Storm Park, and on the other side, which is the boat ramp there in front of Sportcraft, they're going to have an impact on Abernathy Creek comes into the Willamette River right there. So if you're familiar with that boat ramp at all, imagine them using all that area under I-205 and beyond to kind of build platform that they would then work from. And
So they wouldn't work off the barges?
they will be working off barges as well, but they need to build this platform to get out.
What's going to happen to the sea lions? I mean, was that in the impact statement? You got a bunch of fishermen that are happy.
Yeah, they better not get in the fisherman's way.
And that's a pretty lengthy project when they actually do it, so they're going to be out there several years, you know.
Well, I traveled northbound on I-205 this afternoon at 3:30. And again, greatly impresses my importance of this. What a mess. You know, I avoided that area, but I just happened to get trapped in it today at 3:30. And wow, that's terrible.
And it does seem to be the bridge itself that's doing it. That A-cell, D-cell lane on where you come off of McLaughlin and you want to go west, you have to move over one lane. And if you're going to 43, you have to move to the right one lane. So you've got you got cars that want to go right at whatever miles per hour. You got cars that want to go left, and you got about 10 feet to do it in. And
Yeah, but
that
I
seems
think
to be
really
what's
the
going on.
capacity, the width of it is the real problem, because the backups start right at Stafford Road, where you lose that third lane.
And it goes back past the Gladstone interchange going the other way too.
Yeah, yeah.
Are they still holding the schedule that you outlined last time?
Yeah, they're trying to move, you know, relatively quickly. And again, a lot of that's, you know, directed through the legislature. So I heard that they got, I don't know, another 13 million or something from leftover project on Highway 26 to help finish the design work. So yeah, they're moving pretty quick. And one of the challenges in Oregon City, if you, again, have been following the operations center and some of the, there's one other development project in the local news where projects have, if you know, in Oregon City, many of our parks are charter protected, right? And so if you, if you're talking about a charter protected park in Oregon City and you want to do something different to it, like use it for construction purposes, or you know, if you're going to encroach with a roadway project or utility project, then the charter provisions say if it's a charter protected park, you need to go to a vote of the people. And so that's true for John Storm Park, which is right there. And so the state's looking pretty hard at taking that to a November election to make sure they get approval that they need there from the people of Oregon City. And so the big question is, what happens if the voters don't approve it? Well, my suspicion is we'd look at our charter a little harder, because having that kind of a change held up by you know, voter approval would be a shame. So that's coming as well.
Changing the charter, though. Shades of annexations.
Say that again.
I say shades of annexations.
Could be. It could be. The legislature could step in, I suppose.
Would the city look at it prior to that?
Would the city look at what?
The charter issue, rather than wait and see if it passes or fails?
You know,
Oh,
that's a
And
good
that
question.
requires a vote of the people.
It would require, that would require a vote of the people as well. But I think what's interesting is not all the city parks are charter parks. And, you know, I think lawyers would argue about which are and which are not charter protected. But the commission has a goal to clarify that. And, you know, one clarity could be to make that, you know, whether that charter provision was really about stopping things like utilities and roadways from being, I don't necessarily think that that was the intent of the charter, but yet that's how it's being applied in a lot of cases. So, you know, there may be some discussion about those parks that aren't charter protected, how to get them charter protected, and then if we do make them charter protected,
what does that mean?
what does that, you know, what exactly does that mean when it comes to things like, you know, infrastructure? And so, but that conversation should have to happen. But Mike's right, to make adjustments to the charter,
Sure.
it would take a vote of people too. So.
Is there any effort to get the information about John Storm Park out to the people so they understand it prior to election?
Yeah, that's what ODOT is tasked with. We met with them last week and said, hey, this is an issue. And by the way, once it makes the ballot, there's only so much the state or public agencies can do to kind of sell that initiative. Then it becomes.
But doesn't the state
Prior.
also have a eminent domain, for something like that, they could flex the muscle and essentially take possession of that
Not that I know of, but,
No.
I don't think that's been tested. I don't know that they have any more rights to do that than even the city would have rights to go against its own charter.
Actually, they'd have less likelihood because under eminent domain, you have to show that you've been using it, and then you have to negotiate to buy it, and they haven't been using it.
I guess the good news is, in ODOT fashion, they're gonna put that park back. It's a fairly new park anyway, but, at the end of the day, they'll put back, a facility that'll be, as good or better than what it was, so.
But if the city were to go out before it got onto the ballot, they wouldn't be violating the state law, I would think.
You mean with information?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's true.
What are the
So
current occupants down there that might be displaced because of all the construction? What do they think?
I don't know. Sportcraft, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think what we saw in their drawings was there was gonna be, their facility would be impacted because one of the new columns is kind of right at the end of that, covered dock area. So.
And during construction, there's probably a significant impact.
Right, yeah. Although they talked about trying to miss the key user season for that when they're because they do have to close the boat ramp. They talked about closing the boat ramp for about a week, but that was it on either end. A week during construction, a week during tear down, so.
And they'll be avoiding, they've got to follow the in-water work periods, which is really when sportscraft isn't having that much business because, a lot of people aren't utilizing it for fishing recreation. So they'll avoid those windows as part of their construction. So it should be able to dovetail with a lot of their business practices. But it's speculation, but
It's gonna be impactful.
Yeah.
But I guess the main reason for this was there's an open house in Oregon City at the Tumwater Room on June 6th from 5 to 7. So I'm hoping to be there just to kind of see what they have there. And I'd hope to see as many of you that can be there as possible because you guys have good opinions about how to make it work. The only other thing I'll say about ODOT widening is there's also a conversation in the region right now about what they're calling value pricing, tolling, if you will. So there's some, that's been in the paper. So that's probably right now the best source of information that I know of. There's a pretty detailed report, several hundred pages on value pricing and the different options across the region that are being considered by ODOT. And I haven't studied those. So I think having more conversations about that is in the future.
Is there, I brought the stuff over and you was hoping we could get somebody to come in and chat with us about it. Is there any progress there?
Let's see, I'm trying to remember. ODOT is planning to come to, is it our next meeting, Lisa? Or are they, I know they're coming to the city commission, I'm trying to
They're
remember.
coming to city commission. So far, we have 2 presentations scheduled for next meeting. I don't know if we want to add a third. And that's the school district and equitable housing.
Because there's, from what I remember, there's only one really viable option that they've got that they're talking about, and that's to make one lane on 205 a toll lane, and because they would drop the other 4 options, probably.
I've heard something different than that, but, and what I heard was tolling of all lanes on the Abernathy Bridge.
Yeah, that is an option that they're considering, is tolling all 4. They're considering tolling a section of I-5 up by the Rose Quarter. They're considering tolling some lanes on 205 between Stafford Road and West Lynn. They're considering tolling all lanes up around Airport Way, someplace up in that area on 205 also. But in terms of final product, it looks to me like most of those are throwaway options, and the one that'll be left standing is a single lane from I-5 to the bridge, the Glen Jackson Bridge.
So how does that, how does that work? There's gonna be cameras scanning, or
Yeah, the,
track who is in, and do they send you a payment, or?
So it'll probably
so-
be just like, if you've ever been across the Golden Gate Bridge, there's no more toll booths anymore. You just drive across, and if you have like an electronic ID card in your car, it automatically clicks that, and if you don't, like if you're a tourist, it takes a picture of your license plate and sends you a bill.
And the news reports have said that they're considering what WSDOT has in Seattle, which is the cameras and do the license plate reporting and send you a bill.
Yeah, the 2 most prominent methods used nationally, we had toll roads almost exclusively in Florida, is the Easy Pass. So the Easy Pass system is multi-jurisdictional. It's all in like 7 or 8 different states. The benefit with that is you can prepay your toll rates, and then you get a discounted rate for poll, and then, gets people money that you're holding on to and not waiting to recoup. And then the second method is license tag billing, which that costs more money to recoup, but the penalty is you don't pay it, they'll suspend your driver's license. So most people are pretty good about getting it paid.
Would that apply to out-of-state drivers?
Yeah.
Especially.
Yeah, and the jurisdiction I worked, we had license tagging, and we didn't care where you were. If you were a rental car, we'd bill the rental company, and then the rental company in Florida has a little box you got to check saying you're going to get a bill for your toll charges after you return the car 30 days to 60 days later for all of the toll fees that you incur.
But if I'm from Oregon and I go down to Florida and they bill me,
They'll send you to collections if you're an out-of-state driver.
and that's fine. Would they have an agreement with the state of Oregon to suspend a license?
No.
Then the cost of collections for a $3.50
So typically what they
unpaid
did
toll
with the
would
rental
be far
companies,
exceed.
oh, we're getting into the weeds, but typically what they did with the rental companies, it was the rental company billed your credit card regardless.
Oh, yeah, I understand the
So
rental car.
the rental company's paying it, so the state doesn't care.
I'm talking about my personal car.
Yeah, so your personal car, I don't know how that worked. I never drove an out-of-state car in Florida.
Yeah.
I keep wondering about the poor fella from Klamath Falls who goes up to and gets hung up on one of these, and in about 2 months sees a bill come through and say, huh?
I keep thinking about my unpaid parking ticket in San Francisco 40 years ago.
So I just wanted to clarify something, that this widening project, this is all just research at this point. There's no funds set aside to actually do it yet.
Right, that's true. Yeah, they're working on the design though, and I think there's a lot of interest in the region to get that the third lane, if you're talking about between Stafford and the bridge. Yeah, so trying to figure out how to fund that is really what a lot of this tolling question's about. And so, actually what I heard was, and again, I think a lot of this is playing out, but what I heard was they were wanting to start with tolling I-5 between downtown and 217, somewhere in there. They've got a toll location figured out, or thought to be, and it would be all lanes. And they were gonna start with that one, work out the bugs, knowing that the 205 Abernathy Bridge location was another location for that. And there's a lot of concern about, especially when I think about it, a lot of people, if they know there's a toll, a lot of people right now go down 213, hop on 205 and get off on 43, or they get off on West Lynn, 10th Street exit or whatever. If you knew there was a, peak hour toll of $3.50 or whatever the number would be, it's more likely you're gonna come through Oregon City, jump on the Highway 43 bridge, take Willamette Drive, and go wherever you want to go.
That's what I do.
And so that is a big concern. So how do you mitigate that problem? And then on top of that, we've got congestion problems at both.
You could toll Oregon City Bridge.
Yeah.
Which happens to be a state highway bridge.
Exactly, and
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
that eliminates that.
So that combined with the fact that we got
Totally
congestion
approach.
problems at 99E and on the Westland side, they got problems at 43.
Yeah.
So
John, does the State Highway Commission make those decisions? Do they finalize it and make it policy? Or does the state legislature do that?
no, when it comes to funding, it's state legislature, but they get a recommendation from the Oregon Transportation Commission. So you're asking me a question that I'm not 100% certain, but I'm pretty sure when it comes to funding and the decision to move forward with something as unique as tolling in Oregon, I'm pretty sure that's a legislative decision.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, most of this work doesn't really affect the Oregon City. It doesn't affect the residents commuting on the highway, but there's really no impact on Oregon City streets or infrastructure, right?
Well, the project, as
Just that-
ODOT defines it, is adding a third lane from Stafford Road to Gladstone exit, or 213 exit, right? That's their charge, and their charge has been, let's just tie in the existing interchanges. The exception to that is this little on-ramp on the Abernathy Bridge from Highway 43. That's kind of one exception, but really they're not wanting this project scope to creep a lot into the interchanges. And so that's where we're kind of struggling, because you're doing all this bridge work. Yeah, they can tie in the interchanges in a way that won't affect a future project at the 99E interchange, for instance, but we'd kind of like them to just get it all done and include that in the project. That's our preference. But we heard pretty loud and clear that, the message from the top was keep your focus on this third lane and not deal with interchanges at this time. And so that's the effect that it could have on local streets. If they don't deal with it, then we could see all of a sudden the bottleneck then becomes even further a problem at the interchanges.
And as just a sidebar kind of a thing, Clackamas County sent out something a while back saying they were considering putting a bridge in for replacing a Canby ferry, which would help in this situation a little bit if we could, people from Canby could get across the river without having to go through Wilsonville or the Boone Ferry, the Boone Bridge, or up here on 205 and Abernathy bridges. So.
Yeah, I heard that's not a new idea.
It's not a new idea, it's just that they're opening it up again.
I think it's a good idea, but.
Yeah. Because they're losing money on the ferry.
All right, so I think you guys are going beyond what I can answer on I-205 widening, which was really about letting you know there's an open house, so go to it and get all these questions answered.
Just count on it, John, just count on it.
Yeah.
I was gonna talk about the trail news and.
Yeah, go ahead.
So, I'm sure all of you read the trail news, right?
Cover to cover.
Cover to cover. That's good. And do you read the public works section?
Absolutely.
It's the best section, but don't you think, Pat?
Well, I don't know, it's up there.
I mean, police put stuff in here, parks and planning, a swimming pool, you know, they got all their stuff, but it's.
Don't hold a candle
Public
to
Works
Public
is the
Works.
heart of the magazine.
We're the color insert, that's all I
Yeah,
gotta say.
we paid extra for this color insert, and that's what I was wanting to show you. So, in there is I think I handed this out to you guys at last meeting anyway, but
Okay.
just wanted to draw your attention to it again. It's got all the projects that we think were, you know, impactful to you or the citizens, and a little description on what they are, and if you want more information, how to get it. So that's what's in there. And as far as I know, tomorrow the city commission is on the consent agenda to award our big paving contract, which Martin and Matt Olson kind of oversee, and it's a big one this year. It's not necessarily probably our biggest project in sense of miles of pavement, but it's pretty expensive this year. So our bid prices were right in line with the engineer's estimate on this project, but our engineer was wise enough to realize that construction costs have gone up. So it's a little over $2.4 million contract for pavement. And I don't know, you don't know the number of ramps, the 98 ramps that we're fixing in that, do you?
70, I wanna say, 70 something, right, Lisa?
I think so.
Yeah, I wanna say 72 is the
Yeah.
number, but
And 20 sewer inlets and, yeah, it's like.
So,
it's not the biggest contract, but I think it's gonna be probably one of the most impactful, in particular to High Street and South Second Street. There's a series of projects that are gonna be going on, you know, as much as we can, we try and marry our utility work with pavement work following immediately behind it or the next season. It's just a cost savings for all of us, so in a couple weeks, you're gonna see work start on 15th Street for finishing up the stormwater system repairs up there, all the way, it's 15th at Madison, and then also down at 15th and Center. Once those finish, PMUF will come in and finish up all of 15th Street, so that'll be a whole new street segment for almost the entire run. And then the big impactful for the road reconstruction is the water line from South Second all the way out to Third is being replaced.
on High Street.
On High Street, yep. And then there's also some stormwater improvements being done with that. Once those are done, PMUF will be coming through, and it will be a whole new road section moving from South Second out to Third, and then also South Second from Center Street down through High Street. Tumwater's still on the schedule. There's a couple projects we've identified if we start looking at cost overruns about, you know, what could potentially be scaled back. But for now, Tumwater is still on the schedule. Polk Street is still on the schedule. Roundtree is still on the schedule. There's a small section of 12th that will marry up with the new signal that will be going at 12th. So the new signal going in at 12th is going to be slightly impactful. It's going to be a very busy construction season. The mantra we keep telling everybody is short-term inconvenience for a long-term gain.
Is there any hope for, I think it's 14th, between Washington and Main? It's the same street that the Grano Bakery is on. That, so far, I've lost 2 fillings. That has got to be one of the
Wait a minute,
Worst-
which street?
14th.
No, you're thinking, I think 15th.
15th.
15th, yeah,
Okay.
that's the one that we're waiting to fix gonna fix the storm, so Martin mentioned that one. Yeah.
Oh, he did, okay, I missed it, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Thank
so-
goodness.
The bad section is from Main Street out to the trestle. So we'll be working from Main Street to just shy of the trestle. Okay, we can't come within 30 feet of that train trestle, that's
I
there.
mean, you can't replace the pavement underneath the trestle?
We're not replacing their pavement underneath the trestle.
How does that ever happen? Because those are terrible. How does it happen that that street gets repaired at that location?
It'll be a
So,
gravel road eventually, don't
Yeah.
worry.
Are you sure?
and we're not going on through the trestle. So the most we're gonna be doing through there is a small surface treatment, but it's not the full depth reconstruction like we're having on the rest of Main Street.
Well, anyway, I've been asked by my wife to bring it up. And I've been asked by 2 other people to bring it up, so I brought it
That's
up.
the last section on 15th Street that's in really bad.
Yeah, it's terrible. Go drive it sometime. I'm sure you have.
What's the reason for not fixing the section underneath the?
We're not doing full depth reconstruct underneath there. So what's going on the rest of 15th Street, from the trestle all the way back out, is full depth reconstruction.
I know, but what's the reason not doing that section?
So there, it's just a mill and pave through there. We won't be doing any deep excavation because it's Union Pacific's right of way, and they don't have enough information, and we don't have the expense. We don't want to go through the expense of doing the structural engineering to make sure that trestle is not compromised.
Okay.
That's a better explanation of it.
Yeah.
I was pretty sure we were paving it.
Yeah, we're coming through, but it's not full depth reconstruction.
Okay.
So everything from that 30 feet back out through Main Street, brand new.
I have a quick question regarding the pavement management program generally. So what is it, 7 years we're into this program, something like that?
10.
Are we, when we look at the pie chart that shows, streets that are in excellent shape, good and so on, have we gone to the point where we're over the hump and we're shrinking the bad segments fairly significantly now?
We brought you guys a report from the last pavement condition analysis that we did. So overall, our PCI for the city is improving. What was it, 70?
Yeah, I think we
71?
started out at less than 65, and I think we're moving up to like 71 or 2.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
on average, we're getting better. Looking at the different categories of, I don't think we've done that lately, but and I don't recall it, but I'm feeling good about the fact that our average PCI is going.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. My recollection is that our really bad roads, they're still getting worse, but the number of those is decreasing. So it's kind of like this give and take. It's like sliding scale. Is you've got fewer bad roads, but they're getting down to here, and then the average ones are increasing slightly. So, but overall, we've increased the PCI from the last time we ran it by 9 points, is what I recall. Which for a small municipality, that's huge.
Just out of curiosity, has the city ever looked into putting utilities underground?
You mean for, the overhead utilities?
Yeah.
So that's our, so yes, that's a standard requirement for all new development. We do have instances where we require, if there's existing utilities and they're in a corridor that we've identified as should go underground, we're requiring them to go underground. Malal Avenue, for instance, in this redo, we're going to look pretty hard at what we can do with utilities. Now, some cases, especially the high voltage lines, it's not
Sure.
allowable. But we're looking at options for that. Right now, city code says any street, and I struggle with that a little bit because you got neighborhoods that are probably never going to be in a situation where we're going to be able to afford to do that. But it would be good for us to pick specific corridors to get those overhead utilities underground. And so we're still making progress on that. But our standard now for all new construction is they go underground. The hard part is when you have a single family lot that's redeveloping, and you apply that same standard that you might to some large developer that's building 100 homes, it becomes a problem because they really can't afford to take it, and it doesn't always make sense.
Well, PG wouldn't do it.
Yeah, PGE won't necessarily go down for 100 feet
Sure.
and then come back up. So how we do that would probably need to be a much bigger capital improvement plan, but.
The problem is that typically you're required to put the conduits, vaults, and all that stuff for PG before they would even underground, and that gets to be expensive. So utility itself wouldn't underground, even though they're in right of way. You don't have a project per se that they need to move out of the way. You're wanting to make it now an underground, and so they kind of cost share they'll do the wire and pooling the wire and transformers, but then you have to build the actual infrastructure.
Yeah. Right. And the other, so we've tried it in a couple corridors, we tried to keep overhead power off of Main Street, for instance. So yeah, we've made some progress there, but it's an old town, trying to get those converted. The other thing that you struggle with, especially if you take a boulevard like Malala and do that, it's not just getting the main lines underground. Every service drop there would have to be converted to an underground, or they'd run it underground and then bring it up to a weird kind of a riser. And usually that then triggers some improvements inside the building. So PGE has been flexing their muscle on that one and saying, the reality of that is it's very costly to convert, and you need to take it all the way to the building, and that could result in a bunch of private investment in electrical upgrades. It's just the report.
We're at 76, and that's where we started at.
Yeah, okay, so since 2012, it looks like we were at 62 PCI, and we went in 2017 to 76.
Great.
PCI's pavement condition index, it's a methodology for getting an average score for the condition of your pavement for various
Thank you.
segments.
What does that say? Oh, arterial.
Yeah, so it's broken out for road classes. So our arterials on average are 79 PCI, collectors on average are 75 PCI, residential locals on average are a 75 PCI, and then our other roads are a 50. 50 is considered poor.
How do we rank against
Other municipalities?
in the region?
I know Matt's looked at that in the past. I don't have it in this report. We have compared it against other agencies comparable size that are doing PCI reports, but I can't remember where we stand locally.
So that's all I had on the agenda, and it's been an hour. That's pretty good if we can get over in an hour, Bob.
Item 6A, TriMet listening session and future service workshops. I'm looking at this listening sessions thing here. And it lists the cities that they're gonna have these listening sessions, but it doesn't tell where.
It does. You gotta hit the drop down. There's a little drop down area if you go in electronically, but in Oregon City, it's on the 29th. It's at the Abernathy Center from 5 to 6. I looked at it both online on my computer and on my phone, and you can get to it if you've got those kind of devices.
Because I didn't go far enough.
The information is in the staff report. You'll see the location and time and date.
Okay.
That's another one that I think it would be good for members of this committee to attend. I'm going to try to get to it as well.
You serving dinner?
If I know TriMet, they'll have something up there. I don't know about dinner.
Go get a $5 hoop card.
Oh, yeah, that's right, yeah. Okay, item 7, future agenda items. Looks like we've got equitable housing presentation on June 19th. We've got safe routes to schools on down the line, ODOT value pricing, and Myers Road extension. And Bob brought up, what was that you brought up tonight? The
7th Street and Center Street crosswalk.
Yeah, 7th Street. Yeah. And you think about that, that is a pretty dangerous area for pedestrians to cross. Might be worth looking into.
I was just.
Am I missing it? Are we talking about right where the tunnel is?
No.
The pedestrian tunnel?
Oh, that's right across the street here.
Yeah, that's what I thought we were, where are you talking about? I'm sorry.
From City Hall to McLaughlin House.
Directly.
Oh, across that way.
At Singer Hill.
Just right out here.
Right, okay, got it.
Yeah.
Just step off the curb.
People come around that curve.
Right.
Lickety split.
Understand now. Sorry,
Yeah.
I was just confused.
Any other future items anybody would like to bring up?
I have one thing, and I don't know if it belongs with this committee or not, and I'll make a long, sad story short. Yesterday morning,
Closing the sign
Carmageddon,
rather than just sidewalk.
my commute route is down 213 and then McLaughlin Boulevard. And I turned right onto 213, and 100 yards down the road, I see the traffic stop. So I made a U-turn, don't tell anybody. Didn't think to check my phone, because I figured, oh, it's got to be on 213. It couldn't be all the way at the bottom. So I went Maple Lane, Holly Lane, and I ended up at Holcomb and Redland. From Holcomb and Redland to 17th and Washington by the end of the Oregon Trail Center took me an hour. Exactly an hour. And then from there to McLaughlin Boulevard took another 20 minutes. And I want to be careful how I say that, because I love our police department. I think they're terrific, did a terrific job. But with all that going on, and I know they were hammered with trying to investigate the accident, but there was no traffic, nobody directing traffic at any of those intersections, like 15th and Washington. And you had people coming west on 15th, like I was, trying to turn right. You had people coming down the hill, of Washington. You had people coming down Washington trying to turn left. You had people coming down 15th. And my question is, and I don't know if this group would have any role in that or not, but, do we have some sort of a emergency plan on that handful of intersections where if they get shut down, we're all in trouble? And do we have any kind of mutual aid with Clackamas County Sheriff or City of Westland or City of Gladstone? And I don't know if we have that. If we do, it didn't work. And I know our police department was overburdened by that, but I don't know if this group would have a role in trying to push that kind of a plan or not. So I don't know if it belongs on a future agenda or not.
I'd like to see the police department or traffic division or whatever make a presentation to us about what Mike just brought up.
I can add another footnote to that.
That is the second time that something like that's happened, because when they took the bridge out and they moved it, that was just about the same extent as what happened yesterday morning.
Yeah, but there was warning for that, so people knew.
Well, yeah, but there was a little bit of hired direction, that is to say, third-party traffic control people.
Right.
But it was still pretty much hit or miss, driver beware kind of a situation.
Yeah, I mean, I think, trying to assemble that kind of response is going to take some time in itself. And while this happened at 3, I don't know what time they opened it back up. Does anybody know that?
It was...
about 6:45.
Yeah.
They opened it back up at 6:45?
Yep.
So,
And by 10 o'clock, 5th Street was back to normal.
It had a side effect on all the traffic that goes across the Clackamas River by the bridge on the
Carver side?
Carver. And so, because we were going that way, and we ended up in an hour's worth of traffic there, and there wasn't sheriff's deputies directing traffic. I've seen sheriff's deputies directing traffic on very busy Sundays or something like that, when people are swimming. But there wasn't a soul down there, and so we didn't try to cross the bridge there in Carver. We headed east and doubled back. I mean, it was a mess.
The county is still working at Carver Bridge. They were digging a big hole there last night.
Yeah, well, this wasn't part of that. This was, because I drive that a lot, probably 3 or 4 times a week at a minimum. And this is early in the morning, and we heard that there was 213 was closed there, so that was the way we were originally going to go. So we decided, well, we'll sneak out east, only to run into the traffic a little farther east.
So yeah.
How many of you folks are retired? How many of you, raise your hand, how many of you are retired? Are you retired? So we got
Well, my wife says I'm retarded, but that's okay.
So I just want to point out that you guys are retired and you're up at before 7 a.m. in the morning, stuck in traffic. There's kind of a problem with that. I'm just saying, you know, I heard about retirement. Is it supposed to be a little different?
Hey, John, I was specifically avoiding saying where we were going. We were going skiing.
May I make the suggestion that when you retire, you're going to have a very strange enlightenment.
Is that right? Well, I mean,
Don't tell them about it, don't tell them.
Oh, I'm sorry.
But we had a funny thing happen last night at the planning commission meeting, because one of the main topics was potential traffic problems on Holcomb Boulevard with new development. And so as we're having this very active discussion, the person next to me showed me her smartphone, and she's got this app on it that alerts her to any accidents. And I looked at it, and it says, Holcomb Boulevard closed at Abernathy and Redland Road during that discussion. I thought it was kind of apropos. I was going to get up and say something, but I held myself back.
Bob said something funny happened at the planning commission meeting. There was nothing funny about the planning commission. Nothing at all. I didn't hear anybody laughing. There was a lot of grinding of teeth and slamming of doors.
Mike, to try and answer your question, we do coordinate with the police department when there are traffic incidences as much as we can. On a lot of these, there's not a prescribed if this, then that. There are too many variables to try and account for.
yeah.
So there's no wrote or written contingency plan that's just for every little scenario. We do coordinate with them. They talk to us, we talk to them. If there are things that we can roll out and implement, we try to do that. In most instances, and Lisa will tell you this because she's usually the one that gets the call, by the time we get everything loaded up, put into the back of the truck and start getting people rolling out, whatever it was resolves itself.
Yeah.
The other thing that seems to work better than saying, we've got an incident here, now go this direction, is drivers tend to find their own way. And if you tell them you have to go this way, then what winds up happening is you have a magnified effect of congestion in one particular area rather than the system coming to its own little homeostasis. So that's my input.
Yeah, if it's a longer event, we tend to get a little more involved, but yeah, that's,
I was seeing some of what Martin was talking about just now on Fifth Street during that episode yesterday morning. They were stacked up going down to Washington. Every single car was turning right onto Washington. None of them was turning left on to High or Center and coming out to South Second and hitting McLaughlin. That was practically clear of cars.
Well, it's kind of automatic resistance to go in the opposite direction of where you want to get to.
Yep, absolutely, absolutely.
every, I live off South End, so every road coming down, South End, Center Street, Fifth, Malala, every one of those had people coming down. And by the time they got into this downtown area, they were frustrated enough they were turning on all the side streets, thinking they'd find another way, and all that they were really finding was chaos. So I guess that's the other point, is usually when it's gridlock like that, other than those drivers that are so frustrated that they're making quick moves to go somewhere else, or doing a U-turn where they shouldn't do a U-turn. For the most part, it's pretty safe because people aren't traveling very fast.
I found out so far that's this device here is the one that is the most accurate. It's looking at other phones, other cars, and it just tells you just stay there.
And I kicked myself more than once for not checking my phone, because I would have just turned around and gone back home, put my feet up.
Okay, any other future agenda items? I would like to remind especially our new members that next month will be our last meeting going into our July and August break. We do not have meetings in July and August unless it's necessary. We may call other meetings, but normally we don't meet in July and August. Anything else? This meeting is adjourned.